This episode is all about finding the ideal buyer and confidentiality when selling your business in Canada.
Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This is a special series all about selling your business in the Canadian market. Joining me on this expert series is our guest expert business broker, Jim Nairn from Sunbelt Business Brokers. Jim, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Jim, we're talking about confidentiality and finding that ideal buyer in the Canadian market. Can you speak a little bit to the importance of confidentiality when selling your business?
Certainly, that's a huge question and concern for all of the business owners that I work with. They are sometimes even paranoid, if you will, about having that knowledge getting out that they're considering selling their business. So it's very important, especially when you're dealing in smaller communities of pretty much anywhere, that you try to keep this quiet and totally confidential, because it can have seriously negative impacts on the value of a business going forward if the word gets out that it's for sale.
So speaking of that importance and the concern from business owners, what are some of the biggest concerns that you hear from business owners regarding the confidentiality? What are they worried about most?
Indeed. So there's a few different things there, where the first one is, if too many people are finding out and it gets back to their staff, the staff could start having worries about their job security, and they could start looking for work elsewhere. So if you have, say, 5 or 6 staff, or even more, obviously, but if you have a smaller staff around that level, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 of your key people start looking for work, and they go to your competitors or somewhere else to find a job because they're worried that they will lose theirs if the business sells, that can have a serious negative impact on the value of a business.
Are there any big myths or misconceptions floating around out there about confidentiality, or things that these business owners are worried about most? Any myths or misconceptions?
I'm not sure about really any myths as far as that goes, if you will. Like it is a very valid concern, because it's not only the supplier, the staff, I mean, but it's also your suppliers can get wind. They could want potentially different payment terms on your supplies. If you're used to getting a longer term before you have to repay your inventory or your supplies, then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you know what? If you're selling your business, I want to get paid now versus later. That can have a serious impact on your cash flow. As well, your customers could be worried about their the warranties and the services on the products and the services going forward. So they could be potentially start shopping for another place to go that would again, there's no fear of that business being sold per se, if they have that concern for themselves. So this could all very, again, negatively impact the value of a business. So there really aren't many myths out there as far as that goes. The biggest one is that I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, the biggest one would be where just how much control you have over that, because even if you go out talking to your friends and your family, we always recommend that you never talk to even them about it. They can be your closest confidants kind of thing, but all it takes is just for them to have one other slip of a conversation with somebody and get the word out, and then next thing you know, it's totally beyond our control to try to mitigate those kinds of things. So we always recommend that. Obviously, you have to talk to your spouse, your immediate partner and family, but beyond that, your neighbors, your cousins, even your direct relatives, unless they have an actual working relationship in and with the business, I highly recommend to never even disclosing it to them.
So that sounds like a slip up that might be kind of easy to make. So considering, around confidentiality, are there any other like big common mistakes that you've seen people make or any pitfalls people fall into when it comes to confidentiality and selling the business?
Oh, all the time, unfortunately. It happens. I know a lot of real estate agents that sell businesses, but the way that they primarily do it is they will actually show a picture of your business up on the website, almost basically putting a for sale sign in the window saying, here's the business that's for sale. And I'm like, now you've basically gone and, just as we've talked about, you're literally starting to erode the value of that business by doing that. Meanwhile, when we are advertising a business for sale, we do it on what's called a blind profile basis, whereby the ads we draft and we write up specifically so that no one can identify that particular business being for sale. We try to make it generic enough that people understand the industry and the relative significant points in the business so that they can say, yes, you know what, this is something I want to inquire on, but they shouldn't be able to go and identify exactly which business it is that is for sale.
Let's unpack that a little because it really leads to how do you communicate, as you started to mention there, how do you communicate to the world that this business is for sale while maintaining confidentiality? Can you give us an example?
Sometimes it's pretty tricky, especially if you're dealing with like a franchise or something where like they're the only one in the area that is actually that particular franchise. So sometimes we have to do it slightly misleadingly by saying it's actually not a franchise. It's just a general business, say in whatever the industry is. Usually it's more like franchises are oftentimes more like fast food restaurants or they can also be professional services and the like as well. But quite often it's just trying to write the wording, making sure we're not using words that they've previously used in advertisements or communications around when they've been communicating with the public or running flyers out and about. Trying to use a descriptive picture that's generic enough that again the buyers can identify the industry and not the specific store. Sometimes we have to use it, like if they're more about, say, a high-end just furniture store as an example, we would try to just show a generic retail furniture store versus that, or just again, just ways that are still similar, but enough different that somebody shouldn't be able to identify it.
Is there anything in regards to confidentiality or finding the ideal buyer that I didn't think to ask you that you feels important to share as some final thoughts for our business owners out there?
Yeah, so every buyer that we deal with before they get to see the more involved details on the business, other than just what's being advertised to the public, they have to complete a non-disclosure agreement. And part of that non-disclosure agreement, there's a couple different parts. The first one is basically the non-disclosure that says they can't share the information with anybody and it has to remain confidential and so forth. The next part of that is a description of their history, their work history, their education, and the like. And then the next part is their financial history. So we use that as a three-step process to make sure that they have a reasonable amount of experience and personal equity that they can move forward to try to make the deal happen. Because we get all kinds of inquiries from people that are just not qualified to actually move forward on the business. So we don't share the business's information with anybody that doesn't meet the basic criteria to be able to run and take over the business. So certainly there are those concerns that we just don't share that information out with anybody just simply because they inquire. They have to meet that the basic metrics first.
Jim, for business owners who are tuned in Canada that would love to speak with you and perhaps get your help, how can they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Certainly. So you can find me on the internet through Sunbelt Canada / Kingston. You can also find me on LinkedIn, or I'm also on the International Business Brokers and the M&A Source websites, as well as the IBBA Canada. So I'm all over the place there. Just Google Jim Nairn, and you should find a number of different sources that'll bring you to me.
This has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. It was a pleasure being on the show, and thank you for having me.
That was Jim Nairn, expert business broker with Sunbelt Business Brokers. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and we'll see you again on the next episode.